Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on applying to graduate school. I'm Cindy Strobridge, and I'll be your moderator today. Today, we'll cover the essential components of the graduate school application and what it takes to create a stellar package that stands out in a crowd. Before we get started, let me go through a few housekeeping items. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Time permitting, questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. If you do have a question, you can submit that through the Zoom group chat box. Also, this presentation is being recorded. You'll be able to view the recording later today on our YouTube channel, and a link to the recording will be sent out to participants. Now, let me introduce our other moderator, Kim Meredith.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm delighted to join Mercer Bears this afternoon for yet another Career and Professional Development Week offering. As you may already know, our team has designed virtual programming all week that enhances professionalism and focuses on the overall career development of Mercerians. We hope you'll attend all of the events virtual. They're on our YouTube channel, and we're just delighted to be able to host these topics. And we'll go ahead and get started. So there's Cindy and I, and we are part of a very awesome CCPD team, and we're happy to host today's webinar. And we, again, would like to welcome you to the Career and Professional Development Week website, and the website is noted here on the screen. And also want to give you a little urging to join our social media streams where you can see our happenings and announcements in your daily feed. If you want to take just a second now to Mercer CCPD. If you feel led, make a post about today's webinar and use hashtag connect to your future. Our team would like all Mercerians to know that we are offering virtual and phone appointments regularly. The Handshake career development platform that you have helps keep you connected, and that's where our scheduling takes place. Inside the appointments tool, you'll see an option to select a phone or virtual appointment. And so we hope that you'll consider scheduling with us early and often throughout the rest of the term, and let us help you connect to your future and keep your career on course. So I'm going to introduce our speaker, Courtney Honeycutt. We're so delighted to host her for the second time this week. On Tuesday, she gave a presentation about Grad School 101. Today, we're going to take that a step deeper into applying to grad school. Courtney's a Mercer Bear. She works at our Macon campus. She's the coordinator of pre-graduate school advising and academic advising services. She's been with Mercer for a year and a half. Courtney received her bachelor's degree in political science and Spanish from Furman University, and her master's in counselor education with an emphasis in student affairs from Clemson University. She's been working in student support roles for nearly 7 years, and she says her favorite part of her job is being able to connect with students and being a part of their growth and learning. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you so much for joining us again today. We are eager to hear the next step of applying to grad school. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm very happy to be here once again this week to talk more in depth about applying to graduate school. So thank you to those of you who are tuning in now, and to anyone who will tune in later when this is put up on CCPD's YouTube channel. And I'll go ahead and go straight into it. So the first things I want to ask you when you think about applying to graduate school, these are like the pre-steps before you actually start your application, is what matters to you? Why are you going to graduate school? Are you going for passion? Is this just a subject area that you love so much that you can't stand not learning more about it? You can't stand not going deeper. You just got to learn more. Is it a scholarly interest? Are there just things you don't know the answers to? You want to write papers about it. You want to learn more from other scholars. Is it a career motivation? Is this graduate degree required to start your profession or to get advancement in your profession, to be more skilled? Maybe it's all of the above, probably some combination of at least a couple of those. What I want you to do is critically reflect on your reasons for going to graduate school and what you see yourself doing afterwards. Graduate school is not something to be taken lightly, so make sure you know why you're going before you get started here. And then what I want you to do is make a list of those things that are important to you. Write what you want and do not want in a program. Write what your career goals are and how your graduate degree factors in that, or if it's passion-based, how it factors into your own personal growth and development. Write down your research interests if that's what you'll be doing in graduate school, or if you're looking for a program more experiential, write down the kinds of experiences you want in a program. Do you want access to lots of practicum options, internships? Write those things down, and anything else that you think of that's important to you, so that you know what you're focused on before you even start the process. You know what you're looking for and what you want. Along the way, you might find some things that you didn't think about that you like or don't like, and then feel free to add that to your list, but just make sure you have something started so that you know what you're looking for. So applying to graduate school, it's never too early or too late to start thinking about it. I say this every time because whether you're a freshman or a senior, anywhere in between, or later on if you're an alumni and you're thinking about applying to graduate school, you're not too late and you're not too early. If you want to go to graduate school directly after your undergrad, you want to start thinking about it more seriously in your junior year. If you think you'll go at some point, we can talk about it now and you can start thinking about applying whenever's right for you. When you think about applying, I want you to talk it over with those professors in the field you're looking at, any mentors or close family members or friends you have, and see if your head's on straight, right? See if the reasons why you want to go to graduate school check out, if your professors think you're capable. Just make sure you're talking it over with someone to get that good insight from people who know you well. You can also meet with me or another advisor. I'd love to talk with you. One of my favorite things about this role is talking to people about why they want to go to graduate school and what they hope will do for them, because you see a lot of passion coming out there, and I'm happy to talk with you about that. As you prepare to start applying to graduate schools, it's important to realize that there are costs associated with applying to graduate school. Another good reason to know for sure why you're applying in the first place. So usually you'll always have to send your transcripts to the programs you're applying to. And you can get your Mercer transcripts through My Mercer, you know that. But if you did dual enrollment or did transient courses, took courses at another institution over summers or anything, you'll need those transcripts as well. And they can cost anywhere from $5 to $10 around that area to request those official transcripts. And you'll have to pay that each time you send it to a program. Another fee, and this is usually a hefty one, is the fee to take a standardized test. The GRE is the most common, and that's currently $205. Other tests include the LSAT, the GMAT, LSAT for law school, GMAT usually for business, accounting, or economics, and the MCAT, things like that, MCATs for med school. One thing I do want to say for the GRE, because a lot of people actually don't know this, if you qualify for Pell Grants or certain types of financial aid, or you have some sort of economic hardship, I want you to go to the GRE's website and look for the fee reduction waiver. Because if you qualify for that financially, you can get up to 50% off that $205 price tag, which is absolutely great savings. So make sure you look into that and see if you qualify. Application fees. Every program you apply to is going to have a fee of some sort. Some of them are going to be as low as $30 or $35. Some of them will be higher, $75. Usually the higher the cost, the more competitive the program is. This isn't universal, but a lot of times more competitive programs will have a higher cost because they want their applicants to be truly invested in applying and going to this graduate school. If you choose to visit any of your graduate programs that you're applying to, which I highly encourage whenever possible, you might have to pay those travel costs unless you are lucky enough to be invited to visit and interview, and the university is going to pay for those costs. So make sure you think about this and try to save wherever possible beforehand, and also try to save during this process. Like I said, the fee reduction waiver for the GRE is an option. Narrowing down your list so that you know exactly which programs you want to apply to. And another thing with application fees, and I've heard this from several students, your mileage may vary, but if you are in economic hardship and the application fee is something that's preventing you from being able to apply to a program or to apply to more programs, call the admissions department of that program and ask if there's any way to get an application waiver or a reduction, a reduction to see if there's anything possible. The worst they can say is no, and if you're polite and understanding, it's not going to hurt your chances. But I've had several students get their application fee either heavily reduced or completely waived in these situations. So it couldn't hurt to make that phone call, especially if you are in financial need. Okay, so this is a lot of text. This is the general timeline for applying to graduate school. I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. Spring of your junior year, and this is, of course, if you're going directly after undergrad. So if you're going at any other point, it could be about 15 months before you plan on enrolling graduate school. That's when you want to start looking at grad schools, making that list I talked about earlier, doing some searches. And you also want to make sure you're building or have already built relationships with faculty and any internship or research supervisors, because you're going to be looking to them to write you some letters of recommendation. Then you reach the spring or summer of that year. That's when you're going to start looking at which standardized test you need to take. You're going to sign up for a course and you're going to start prepping. And there's a lot, I'll talk a little bit more later on about good ways to prepare for these standardized tests. Just keep in mind what that timeline is. And the good thing about doing it in spring or summer is that most likely you won't be in courses over the summer, so that you have hopefully some more time to study for those tests. My recommendation is that you take that standardized test either August of your senior year, or if you're applying at another time, about 12 months before you would enroll in the graduate program. You can take it earlier, you can take it a little bit later. Most standardized test scores are valid for at least a few years. The GRE is valid for 5 years. The reason why I suggest August is that it gives you the full summer to study, and it also means that if you're not happy with your first score, you have time throughout the fall semester to study again, take some more practice tests, and take it a second time if necessary, and still get those scores back in time to apply to graduate school. Then early to mid-fall, the year before you would enroll, you're going to prepare all your application materials, and I'll break down what those are in the next slide. At the same time, you want to be researching funding opportunities for those schools. I'll talk about this a little bit more as well. And if you can, plan to visit. December is when you're most likely going to round out those applications. Some of them might be due in January or February, but usually a lot of them are in December. And you want to double and triple check your applications. Make sure you've dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, grammar's good, you haven't missed anything, and go ahead and apply. And some programs may be doing graduate school interviews, and you may be invited to interview in this December to February period, so keep that in mind. And then most likely you'll hear your decisions around March. Again, sometimes it's earlier, sometimes just a little bit later. And I put defer acceptance here, and if you were tuned in on Tuesday, you heard me say this before, but I do this so that if you find yourself in a position where at the end of senior year, you're feeling burnt out, or you realize you want to take a break, maybe another opportunity came up, maybe you have some issues with your family that you need to attend to for the year, you can look into potentially deferring your acceptance for a year. That way, I just want you to know this in case you get in a situation where you really wanted to go to a program and you got accepted, but you can't go right away. That's something you can talk to them about. Don't just kind of let it slide and miss the opportunity. So here are the application requirements in general. You're gonna, as I mentioned, the online application and fee. Usually the online application is gonna be some short answer, a lot of information about your academic background, etc. This is kind of like common, what you would expect to see. You're gonna need your official transcripts, as I mentioned before, and you're gonna need letters of recommendation. Usually you'll need about 3 of these. I'll talk about those a little bit more in depth. You need your standardized test scores. You'll have to write what's called a personal statement, which I'll touch on again later. And there may be some specific requirements for each program. Some places will require you to submit a resume or CV as well. Some places won't. And depending on what type of program, you might have to submit like a journalism portfolio or an art portfolio, perhaps a writing sample or a research sample. So make sure you check with each program and see if they have something specific for that application that you don't have to do for the others. Make sure you don't miss anything. Your admission decisions are largely going to be based on a few things. The first 2 are the big numbers. Those are your GPA and your GRE or standardized test scores. These are the first kind of hurdles that you're going to cross when you have admissions looking over your application portfolio. So if you're in a position where you're not a senior just yet, or if you are a senior, make sure you are maintaining a strong GPA. Some graduate schools want at least a 3.0 or a 3.2. The more competitive graduate schools will want at least a 3.4 or sometimes even much higher than that. So look into that and make sure you're working to maintain those grades. And then GRE score, that's what the target is for each school will vary. You can usually find this on their website or contact staff for the department and see what the mean test scores were for the last admitted class of graduate students, and kind of see where you stack up or where you need to aim for. Once you get past that, they're going to be looking at you more holistically. They want to see what you've been involved in on campus, what extracurriculars you've done. They want to see your research, your internships, your work experience, if you have any. They're going to look at your letters of recommendation in depth and see what the people who know you have to say about you. And I skipped this one, but they're also going to look at your personal statement. I can't emphasize enough the importance of this piece of writing, because it is your way to present yourself as something other than a number and to show how interested you are. I'll touch on that a little bit later. And then lastly, if they do an interview, that's going to be another thing they base their admissions decisions on. Okay. So when you're searching for schools, I want you to start by asking your professors about programs. What program did they go to, or did their colleagues go to? Where have they seen recent Mercer grads go and been successful or been having a good experience? Talk to mentors in your field. So if you did an internship or practicum off campus or anything like that, see where they went to graduate school, or where some people in that office went to graduate school, and what schools they look at as, you know, top schools for when they come to hire people. That's a great way to get that inside knowledge as well. You can also do a Google search. That's a great place to start. But I want to tell you to also use some graduate school search engines. And so I'm going to show you this link, and I'm going to go through this a little bit with you. Let's see. Okay. So this is our website for graduate school advising, and there are, as you see, a lot of search engines here that you can use to start looking for your graduate schools. I like them because you can narrow by, say, your major, what type of degree you're looking at, and other options like that. I'll also point out, if you scroll down, there's some databases for looking for funding for graduate school. Some of these fellowships are specific, like the Truman Scholarship for Careers in Public Service. The UCLA Grapes database is a fantastic resource for finding fellowships and scholarships. You use these as much as you can to utilize resources while you're applying to graduate school and looking for funding. And then, of course, I list some of our other offices on campus, including CCPD, that can be helpful to you as you're working towards graduate school. I also want to actually walk through, we're going to look at the Peterson's guide of what you can do to look for graduate schools. This is where the link will take you. And I like to just go ahead and click search without entering anything, because then you can enter more specific results. So maybe you are looking for, let's say, a doctorate in psychology. There's lots of different psychologies, right? Maybe you want to do clinical psychology. You want to be a psychologist and see clients. You can narrow by tuition. You can look at school size, if you want to have a small cohort, the setting, if that's important to you, or, you know, anything like that. But I usually like to narrow it down here. You know, I don't know why it's only showing 2 graduate schools, because there's obviously a lot more than that. But let me see if I can just do psychology in general. Let's do applied psychology. I'm wondering if I have something narrowed here. Okay, that's fine. I want to go ahead and look at one of these, and the reason for that is that some of these websites are difficult to navigate, and I want you to be able to look at these programs and know what you're looking for, because the more information you can get on the website, the more valuable it is. So I'll look at some more information for this school. Sometimes you have to like log in to get more information, but it's a good place to just kind of get names. So we're going to look at anatomy and cell biology for Indiana University. So once you do, like I said, you get the names, and then I want you to Google it. This talks about the department in general, but let's look at their education programs. You know, this is the top bars where you're going to navigate that, and we're going to want to look at graduate degrees. They have master's and PhD programs, and you can see the different areas. You can see where they're looking for different, you know, pursuing a graduate school. You can learn more about master's and PhD programs, and I want to do that as well. So there's an education track. So if you want to teach biology, and there's a research track, they talk about how you're going to get your advisory committee, your qualifying exams, and all of that information. And another thing I want you to do here, so you can check out the curriculum and the research they're doing. And there's details about the faculty research labs. This is a key thing to start looking for, especially if you're looking in a research area. You want to see what their faculty are working on to make sure that what you're interested in researching is actually being researched at that university. That's incredibly important. So the McNulty lab, it looks like they're doing bone and joint pathology. If that's what you were looking for, suddenly this becomes one of the big programs you're interested in, right? You can also break it down by courses. What are they offering? Make sure that you see things here that you're interested in taking that follow along what you're looking at, and then the research courses. See what's available there and how they navigate that. I also want you to look at contacts. The reason why I list this is because when you are looking at graduate schools, you absolutely should be asking questions. And the best place to do that is not the admissions office of Indiana University in this case. The best place to do that is to start with either the department chair, or I want you to scroll and usually look for, so this one doesn't have like a student coordinator, but sometimes you'll find a graduate student coordinator or a student services coordinator in these contacts lists. And that is the perfect person to ask questions like, what's the mean GRE for students that were accepted last year? What GPA do you look at? How many faculty recommend, any questions you have about the program, that's where you target it. Here it would be for Dr. Catherine Jones, the department chair. So learning to navigate these websites and finding this key information throughout is going to be really important. It'll also help you get to know the university a little bit better. So you can see what they're doing. They keep up to date with news and events within their club. It looks like it's a little bit sparse, but you can find out a lot of information here. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and show you that. And we'll go ahead back to our PowerPoint here. So what are you actually looking for in programs? I mentioned this when we were looking at the website. If you are doing research, you want to see what the faculty's research areas or expertise areas are. So expertise being if you are looking for a career-based position or graduate program, see if you want to do special education, make sure that you have faculty who specialize in special education. And for your research faculty, you want to see if they've published recently. What research are they doing right now? And how much of it is, being published in scholarly articles and journals that are relevant to that field. And then look at what their current graduate students are doing. Sometimes they'll post this on their website. Sometimes, like I said, this is when you reach out to staff and ask if you can talk to current graduate students. They're more than happy to help you because they want to promote their school and they want to make sure those that apply are really interested in going. I've actually worked in a role as a graduate student support services member. And my colleague's role was always to navigate questions for prospective applicants. So they're more than happy to help. Do not be afraid to reach out. So see what their current graduate students are doing. A lot of times those graduate students are also publishing in articles or are out working in the field, and see what kind of experiences they're having and if that's something you want to be a part of. You can see what their alumni have done. You can connect to them on LinkedIn or Handshake. If they celebrate their graduates on their website, and see where their students are going. This is going to give you a good indication of what you should expect from the program. Be organized. Another important thing as you're looking at graduate schools. I want you to keep a spreadsheet or list of what programs you're looking at. Take notes on what sticks out to you. Focus on what's important to you. Refer back to those lists I talked about earlier in the presentation, and keep track of the details. So I've got another link here, and I'm going to take us right back and I'll show this to you. So back to our resources website, if you scroll up, you'll see that there's a tracking sheet to stay on top of it. So I want to show you what happens when we download that. And the sheet that I've made for you all is, it's a simple Excel sheet, but I think it would be helpful. It's got a place for you to list all your schools that you're looking at. You can expand on past the 8 if you want or need to, their deadlines, location, program, degree, all of this information that's important to know, pros and cons, so that you have it all in one place. You can kind of compare and contrast that way. What's more is I have another tab for your fellowships and scholarships that you want to apply to. The award amount, anything you need to know about those. Some checklists help keep you on track for what you're applying to and the steps along the way, and a place for you to take notes. I just show you this so that you can see a place where if you want to get organized but don't want to have to build the basis for doing that, you can use this document to help you. Okay. And then once you've gathered a bunch of schools, you've evaluated them, you're going to need to narrow your list. So The way to do that is consider your likelihood of acceptance. What are your GRE scores compared to what they expect, your GPA, other requirements or experiences they recommend or expect. For example, if you're applying to an MBA program, they might require 2 years of professional experience beforehand. So make sure you meet all those requirements. Weigh your personal pros and cons. Again, reach out to your personal resources and talk to them. And if you can, go ahead and visit. Take a spring break and go visit a few schools if you can. Take a road trip. It can really make a difference, and you can get good tours for graduate students and prospective graduate students to learn a lot about what's going on that campus. I usually recommend that you apply to around 4 schools. You can obviously apply to more. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Some places will recommend that you apply to as many as 9. I'm not going to do that for several reasons. For a couple reasons. One of the main ones is the cost involved. You have to send your standardized test scores to each school, and to do that, beyond the first 4 schools for the GRE, they'll send scores to 4 schools for free. But beyond that, you have to pay around $15 to send your scores to a school. So the more applications that you're sending, that's more application fees, that's more, fees to send your scores. So if you're going to go beyond 4, have a good reason to do it. You can. I'm not discouraging you. Just make sure you know why. Of the schools I ask you to apply to, I want one of those schools to be a dream school. So it has a competitive admission requirements and only admits top students, but you meet the minimum requirements of GPA or the GRE, and you'd love to get in that program. You're going to want at least one safety school. This is where you exceed the minimum requirements for GPA and the GRE or other standardized tests, and you feel pretty comfortable that you're going to get into that school. The next 2 are your target schools. This is where you meet or exceed the GPA requirement and their minimum scores. So then they're kind of, they're a little bit more competitive than maybe your safety schools, but you're still, you think you'll get in, most likely. If you choose to add schools, add to each category proportionately. Maybe only add 1 more dream school, but you should also add another safety or target school, right? You want to just make sure you kind of keep that ratio so that you increase your chances of getting accepted. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you to consider your funding options while you're looking at graduate schools. As you're looking into programs, ask them what kind of graduate assistantships their students get. If they're available within the department, they may be research assistantships or teaching assistantships. And the reason why teaching assistants or assistantships in general are so valuable is that most cases you are going to get a tuition waiver or reduction, which is huge. You're also going to get a stipend. It's not, these are usually nominal stipends. You'll probably still have roommates. You're not going to be making it rich, but you'll get a stipend and your tuition covered, as well as reduced fees for that semester. So assistantships can be crucial. If they don't have departmentally based assistantships, ask if they have students who've worked on campus in other areas. For example, our office has a graduate assistant who helps with our marketing, and with our social media and things like that, and helps with our summer programs. Look for fellowships and scholarships. I showed you where you can find some of those resources, and make sure you apply alongside applying to graduate schools. The good news is that fellowship and scholarship applications have the same kind of application requirements for the most part as graduate school. So once you're applying to graduate schools, it doesn't take much effort to also apply to fellowships or scholarships. And you get the potential of having funding for your graduate program, or at least a little bit of funding. So make sure you do that. There also could be fellowship or scholarship opportunities within the programs you're applying to. Some schools will have endowments that allow them to, award financial awards to prospective graduate students as they're admitted. Make sure that you're being considered for financial aid when you apply, and if there's anything else that you could apply to separately, make sure you're aware of that. But usually you will be considered for these scholarships as part of your application. You can also consider using federal loans. Some professional programs, especially, this is more common because what's called the return of investment is high. This means that the salary you're likely to earn after graduate school is going to make it easier for you to pay off those loans, so that you're getting a lot back for your investment in graduate school beyond the cost of the loans. You'll still have to complete your FAFSA, so make sure you do that as soon as you are able. And you may be able to file FAFSA as an independent rather than a dependent like you did in undergrad, and that would mean you are eligible for more aid. Another funding option is through employment. If you have if you happen to get a job where the corporation or the government that you're working for or the institution of higher ed or whatever it is has a policy where they allow their graduate or their employees to take certain numbers of credits for free, or they'll pay for them to get advancement in the field they're working in. Those exist. So if you're wanting to do something like that, let's talk with CCPD about positions, and when you're looking for jobs, see if that's part of their benefits. This is really important in business or economy and accounting, because programs like an MBA often want you to have professional experience anyways. So if you are working with a corporation and you're doing well, getting that professional experience, and they want to keep you on, they may pay for your graduate school. You know, there might be an exchange of loyalty, you know, work for us at least 3 years afterwards or something like that. But that could be something that you're interested in. So don't count that out. Going back to your letters of recommendation, you'll usually need about 3 of them, and you want to make sure that the people you're requesting these letters from know you well. So build your relationships with faculty early on. If you haven't started this already, please start. One of the big advantages of being on a smaller campus is that your faculty are way more available to you than they would be on larger state campuses or other universities. So take advantage of that, and make sure they know you well enough to write a good letter. And the majority of your letters should be faculty, but it's okay to also have a research or internship supervisor or work supervisor as well, but the majority should usually be faculty. Make sure you ask for those recommendations well in advance of the deadline, at least a month, but preferably longer. So for example, if your deadline is in December, I'd say ask for those recommendations in August or September, because you don't want to hit a faculty member with a request for a letter in the middle of midterms. They're not going to be as pleased to do it. So make sure you ask them well in advance and give them plenty of time to be able to write that letter. You can also ask if they'll write letters for your fellowships or scholarships that might also need letters of recommendation. Like I said, apply for both at the same time, and it makes it a little bit easier. Send friendly reminders to faculty along the way. Faculty are very busy. They will forget. As long as you're polite, they'll be understanding. So don't be afraid to send some reminders throughout that period. When you're done, make sure you send them thank you notes. Thank the people that help you get where you're going. It's very important to maintain those relationships, because they might be your colleagues in the future. And it's also just plain kindness, you know. Let them know where you've been admitted and where you'll be attending. You know, keep them up to date with what you're doing, because they've invested in it. They've invested time and they've written these letters for you, so they clearly care about your professional advancement. So keep them up to date. And when you request those letters, it's a good idea to give them your resume or your personal statement. If you only have a draft, that's okay. And be sure to tell them why you're pursuing graduate school, so that they know what you want to do and why when they write about your letter. Finally, we have the personal statement. Like I said, this is probably one of the most important things that you have control over in this application. It is a chance for you to present yourself just beyond just the numbers and to really be personal. You're going to be professional. It is a writing sample. You want it to have proper grammar and everything, but you also want it to sound like you. You want it to be something that reads like something that you would present or something that you would talk, and something that's authentic and genuine. Your main message of this personal statement should be that your reasons for wanting to study blank, whatever it is, or to be a blank if you're going to professional school, are mature, developed, and thoughtful. You don't just want to be a doctor because you love Grey's Anatomy, for example. Make sure you've reflected on this and you know in-depth answers to those questions. You also want to show that you have the skills and preparation to be successful. This doesn't mean writing out your resume in prose form. This means using direct, specific examples and talking about how exactly those have made you prepared. There are some different ways to write it. Expository is going to be kind of your standard essay. Descriptive or narrative are kind of similar, in which you're going to tell a story through your personal statement, and that story is going to indicate who you are and why you're going to be successful in this program, why you care. Which style you write in really just depends on what you prefer. So whatever you feel like you'd be best at, I'd say stick with that. And absolutely seek guidance when you're writing your personal statement. Get feedback from your advisors. Myself, I'm happy to read personal statements and send feedback. You can talk to some folks in CCPD, see if they're willing to do that, or your faculty members themselves will be willing to read your personal statement. I also do personal statement workshops. I'll be hosting at least 2 in the fall, so make sure you keep your eyes out for those. So I'm just going to finish out with some general application tips. Use proper grammar and spelling throughout the application. The worst thing that you can do is use text speech and just make yourself from the beginning seem unprofessional or uninvested because you didn't take the time to make sure your application was clean and free of errors. Unless a question doesn't apply to you, make sure you don't leave blank answers. Don't skip those short answer questions if they have them. The one way it would be good to skip a question is if they ask, for example, if you have special circumstances related to a low GPA that you want to explain. If your GPA is not low and you don't need to explain that, you can leave that blank. But other than that, don't leave blank answers. Keep all your documents organized so that you send all that you need for the application at one time. You don't want to be scrambling because like, oh, I forgot to include the transcript. Oh, I forgot this letter. Make sure you keep everything organized. In your personal statement, in interviews, in talking to faculty, be confident but not arrogant. Be invested and show that you care. This should be easy because if you're applying to graduate school, you've come this far, you should care about what you're applying to. Yeah, I said this earlier, but contact the departments and ask questions. In research programs especially, but in all programs, it's okay or even really good to contact the faculty directly of those programs. If you are interested in a particular brand of research and have done some in the past and you see a faculty member who's doing something really similar and you get excited reading about their research, contact them. Let them know you're a prospective graduate student and that you really like their research area. Could they tell you more about it? Talk about some things that you've done and see if you hear back. The worst thing that happens, assuming that you are polite and use proper grammar, the worst thing that happens is they don't respond. Now, if you're impolite and don't use proper grammar, you know, this may hurt your chances, but I'm going to assume you're on the up and up and that you're doing everything professionally. The best thing that can happen is that you strike up a conversation with a faculty member of this program, you share interests, and when you go to apply, they may be looking for your application to see if you can be in their research group. Suddenly you might have a research assistantship that you might not have had if you hadn't made this connection. So be sure to reach out to those faculty. There's a lot of networking in this side of graduate school applications. So if you need help with networking, CCPD is a place to go. I can also talk you through some of that. I've actually read emails in the past that students have been sending to faculty to talk about research interests because they just wanted to make sure they sounded good and weren't too wordy, you know, that kind of thing. I'm happy to do that as well. When you start hearing back, wait until you've heard from all the programs you applied to before you make your final decision. This is generally good practice, and it also prevents maybe missing out on a better financial award, and it prevents you committing to a school early on and then wanting to change your mind later. That's definitely not best practice. And then when you made your decision, notify all the programs of whether you accept or not. You don't want to leave a program sort of like hanging, wondering whether or not you're going to accept their offer, because it's just not good practice, and you want to maintain relationships, especially if you're going to go into academia later and you don't know where you'll be looking for a faculty position. And I said this before, but I'll say it again, write thank you notes to your letter writers. Absolutely thank the people that help you get there and keep in touch because these relationships are valuable and it would be remiss to just kind of let them go away. And they're going to be your peers at some point. So keep in touch and be professional and say thank you. Don't go it alone. Like I said, I'm here with you throughout the process, wherever you are. I also work with alumni, so once a bear, always a bear. If you decide to go to graduate school later or you know you're going to go, but you want to take gap years, contact me when it's your time to apply to graduate school. We'll work together on it. Remember to consult your faculty, use CCPD resources as applicable as well. And I'm happy to talk with you at any point. So at this point, I'll see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Courtney. That was an excellent presentation as usual. That was so wonderful. I even learned some new things. That was great.
Great.
If you do have a question, please go ahead and type it in our chat box on your right-hand side of your screen should be. I do have a couple questions that I've been thinking of and that I've gotten some responses from. So let me go through those. For you, Courtney, what is the best way to get assistance with the personal statement, especially since, given our current time when we're currently not on campus, how can students best access you or get help with a personal statement?
Right. So I'm also doing Zoom appointments. And the easiest way to make an appointment with me is to use Starfish, which you can access through my Mercer. That way you can pick one of my available times. It'll put you on my calendar. I'll be expecting you. There's a place when you make those appointments to write notes, and you can say, I want to talk about my personal statement. So even if you don't have a draft and you did, or you do, but you really want to start from scratch, I can talk you through how to get started. One of the things I like to do when we talk about personal statements is I like to ask you, why do you want to go to graduate school? You know, simple questions. And then you start telling a story, and we turn that story into a writing piece. That's what I'm there to help you with. So make an appointment or send me an email and we'll work through there.
Wonderful. Now, can you just remind me, so if we have any distance learners, I know Starfish is generally used for our undergraduate population, and they're
Yes,
probably
that's true.
the most ones familiar with it, but does everyone have access to Starfish?
Everyone does not have access to Starfish. Thank you for bringing that up. If you are not a current student or you're in a distance learning situation and you don't have access to that, just send me an email and we'll set up a meeting manually that way. We might have a little bit of back and forth with days and times, but we'll do it and we'll make it happen. Send me an email.
Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for some more questions. Let's see. How about the I love the Excel spreadsheet that you pulled up earlier. Is that a template that students can get off the academic and advising site? Is that something that you share widely with people, or do they need to make an
Yes.
appointment to
It's
kind of go through?
directly on our website. So I'll pull that up again. If you look towards the middle of the page here, this is actually a link and you click that and it's going to go ahead and download that worksheet for you. So it's widely available. Please take advantage of it. That's there for you all.
Excellent. We have another question. If not accepted on someone's first try of applying to graduate school, do you advise a reapplication?
Well, the first question I would have for you is, do you still want to go? And this is kind of going to be a test of your perseverance and your goals. If you still want to go to graduate school and you're very disappointed, then yeah, you should reapply and we'll work together on figuring out what went wrong the first time. I'll ask you to get feedback from the schools you applied to, why they said no. You may or may not get an answer, but if you do get some responses to some things you can improve on, it's going to be invaluable. You may need to get more work experience, or you may need to just keep getting other life experiences, and applying again would help in that way. It could be that that particular year was really competitive and you just didn't quite make it, but you could apply again. So that's a good reason to reach out to those programs and see what they have to say about that. But definitely reapply if you're interested. But if you get those no's and you're like a little relieved, or you realize you weren't sure that you wanted to go, that's just something to reevaluate as well. And we can talk through that and see if grad school is still something you want to do.
That's great advice. And I know you mentioned in your presentation about taking the GRE and when to prep for it and when's best to prep for it, but did you go through any resources to help with prep? Or do you have suggestions for resources?
I must have missed that slide. Thank you so much. So preparation for all standardized tests, I give two pieces of advice. The first one is know yourself. How do you study? Do you need some sort of accountability? Do you need to have something, study materials that are given to you, processes to work through, and some feedback throughout the way? Or are you able to self-study? Can you take a workbook, schedule yourself time to study, stick to that schedule, and keep going? If you're the latter, you can do self-study. The best way to prepare for you is going to be through workbooks. We do have some in the Academic Resource Center, but unfortunately right now those aren't accessible online. So you can use free resources. One of them is Khan Academy. That's really helpful for the GRE math portion. There's a little bit for the GRE verbal portion, but more the math portion on Khan Academy. It's also really worth it to invest in the GRE company's workbook for both sections, because the book is around $35, but it's comprehensive. And it also includes several free practice tests. And that's my second piece of advice. Take as many practice tests as you can. The more practice tests you take, the more you know where you need to keep studying and where you're scoring, so that you know when you're ready to take that test. If you are the kind of learner who needs that accountability, then it might be good for you to enroll in a prep course to take some directed study measures for your GRE. This is the more costly option, but if that's what you need and you can afford to do it, absolutely go for it. If you do go this route, I'd like for you to talk with me first, because Mercer University does have a deal with the Princeton Review, which is a preparation company that gives Mercer students up to 50% off preparation courses. So we want to make sure that if you're going to go that route, we get you the best deal you can. And I do trust the Princeton Review's resources. They also have some really good, refund policies if they didn't deliver on your expectations or you didn't score where they expected you to. So it's a really great program. If you choose to go that route, let us know and we'll get you the best deal we can.
That was incredible advice. I think that wraps up all of our questions in our chat box. So Courtney, we want to thank you again so much for joining us for our second webinar with you. I'm going to let Kim hop in for a quick second.
Thank you so much, Courtney.
Absolutely.
I also have some great takeaways, and I loved, just from the career development standpoint in the very beginning when you were talking about writing down your career goals and how does your grad degree fit in. So that is such a wonderful part of our collaboration together, that if a person were unclear about their career goals, then they can come and see us in the Center for Career and Professional Development.
Absolutely.
And we are just great collaborators in that to help students clarify their career goals. And then the other thing I thought, well, don't forget, our favorite thing to do in CCPD is to review resumes. And so resume development for specific purpose of grad school admission is definitely in our wheelhouse, and we're ready to serve students in that regard. And I just thank you. I learned a ton because I had no idea about the fee reduction waiver for the GRE. So
yes, that's a big one.
Great advice. Thank you for making these presentations this week.
You're very welcome.
Well, and I think we will conclude there. Thank you all for attending the webinar today.